So I first want to begin by welcoming everyone. My name is Renee Welch. I'm the director of the Center for Career Readiness at the University of Northern Colorado. And my staff and I want to welcome you all here today. So this event is our K-12 Educator Employment Days preparation workshop, where we want our students to have an opportunity to learn and to think about how they can best be successful while interviewing and connecting with schools and school districts about opportunities for employment. So today we're joined by a gracious panel of school district and school representatives. Thank you all for being with us. In a moment, we'll go through a panel in which my staff and I have created some questions to ask of our panelists. And following the panel, we are going to help you all have an understanding of how to navigate the virtual employment fair through your Handshake account. And then following that, we're going to have a question and answer session with all candidates. So we'll be available to answer questions live. During the panel, if you all have questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A. For anything that we can respond to, we have a group of staff who will be working to answer questions that are available. And then some of them, panelists, if you're okay, I will help navigate the questions that students are asking and ask those of you in addition to some of the questions that we have already created. So I'm wondering if to begin, our panelists could turn on their cameras so we can see you all. And then if we could each introduce yourselves. We'll just go in order here that I can see your faces. If you could share with us your name, the school you represent, that would be really, really helpful, school or district. So Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Brian Childress. I'm the Director of Human Resources for Morgan County Schools in Fort Morgan.
Thank you, Brian. Yvonne?
Hello, everyone. My name is Yvonne Jackson. I am currently the assistant principal at Pine Ridge Elementary in Cherry Creek Schools.
Thank you, Yvonne. Angela?
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Faison. I'm on the talent acquisition team, Denver Public Schools.
Thanks for being with us, Angela. Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy Starr. I am a Human Resource Specialist and Recruiter for School District 51 in Grand Junction.
Lydia?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lydia Taylor, and I'm with Talent Acquisition with Cherry Creek Schools.
Thank you, Lydia. Nidia?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nidia Martinez. I'm the principal of Salida del Sol Academy. We are a charter school here in Greeley.
Thank you all for being with us. We're going to hop right in here to our first question for the panel. And this question is for Angela and Brian. What will you be looking for in a candidate during the virtual K-12 Educator Employment Days?
We'll be looking for someone who has an equity mindset, an anti-racist lens, who understands that students come first in all of what we do, whether it's safety, education, someone who understands the importance of closing the opportunity and academic gap, regardless of what culture or ethnicity you might happen to be from. Also looking for someone who understands how to do scaffolding in their teaching, understanding that all children don't learn in the same manner and being patient with that process, and someone who's willing to collaborate with other schools, regardless of what experience you have, understanding that it takes a village to provide the optimal education for a child. So someone who's willing to be a team player and someone who works in collaboration and excellence.
Nice. And I'll just double endorse what Angela said. That was very well put. As we go through this, I'm not going to echo what my partners say, but I'll try to add on so that it's as rich a conversation as possible. But Angela's exactly right about culturally responsive instruction and equity mindset. It's such a huge deal. We've been not meeting the challenge and not meeting our students' needs for too long. So we're really looking for folks that can help us move that agenda forward. I'll add a practical piece. When candidates are interviewing in this environment, it can be really easy to lose control of the conversation. So my little tidbit of advice here is to try to keep control of the conversation. And so think about your answers in terms of a sandwich. Give us the short answer to tell us about your discipline style, or tell us a little bit about your background, or, so give us the short answer and then give us some detail. And the detail should be a real experience around your instructional practice. Like Angela was talking about, if it's steeped in equity, if it's steeped in culturally responsive practices, that's really helpful. But whatever it is, give us that example and then finish it again and tell us kind of that thing that sums up your candidacy. So I pride myself in my collaboration. Here's how I've collaborated in culturally responsive practices, and that's how I show my collaborative style with my peers or with my colleagues. So what it does for us as interviewers is it tells us that you have control over the conversation, you've got control over your answers, and you can dip into your experience and tell us a little bit about that. So I'll add that just practical piece there.
We have a question that just came in through the chat. A student is wondering, how many teachers do you all expect to hire or need within the state right now? Maybe Taylor, Cindy, Nidia, could you just tell us how many teachers you're expecting to hire?
Well, I think this is going to be an interesting year because of COVID. I think we're all kind of in the same boat where we're like, hey, we're not really sure how many we're going to need to hire, but I would say on an average year in Mesa County School District 51, we hire probably about 150 new teachers, sometimes more than that, up to 180. So it's somewhere around on average about 150. We're like 22,000 students.
I can only speak for our small charter school. We service 600 students, between 600 and 650 students, and I'm looking to hire about 10 new teachers this year.
Lydia, do you have a number for Cherry Creek, or did you type the answer?
So I will agree with Cindy that this is a unique year. Our average is generally between 400 and 500 new teachers per year. We're still kind of waiting to see how things are going to shake out with regard to vacancies. I don't expect that it'll be a lot less than that, but we do have to account for COVID. So potentially we could be hiring less teachers as a result. But yeah, we usually hire about 400.
Okay, this question is for Cindy, Lydia, and Nidia. What information should candidates be prepared to discuss with you during their interview?
Well, I can see that Lydia and Nidia is going to be interesting for. Yeah. Go ahead, Cindy.
I would say, I'm assuming that the majority of those teachers are going to be student teachers that probably either just finished up or maybe finished up in the fall. So I would say they need to be prepared to talk about their experience. How did their student teaching go? Like what obstacles did they have to overcome, especially with COVID and maybe going in and out of online learning? How did they overcome some of those obstacles? They need to be prepared to talk about how did they build relationships with students? How did they manage behaviors that were difficult in their classroom? How did they communicate with parents? How did they work with their other colleagues? How did they go about doing the lesson planning? How do they build that? And obviously, kind of as Brian said earlier, be specific. Don't be general in your answers. Be very specific. Give specific examples about a situation that you had a difficult student, or as just one of those points that I talked about. And how did you overcome that? How do you go about building relationships, and give very specific responses? Because I think for me personally, when I'm recruiting, if I have a student that gives me a very specific response and a story, I remember it, and I can remember that student.
I would say that we want to know your story. We want to know how you found yourself in this place where you want to become a teacher. What is it that motivated you to become a teacher? And another thing that we want to know is something that my colleague Yvonne brought up in a conversation about recruiting, is we want to know what a lesson looks like. What does a lesson look like for you, particularly in incorporating literacy and math, regardless of what your content area is? How are you incorporating literacy and math into your curriculum as a new teacher?
Yeah, and I would echo absolutely both Cindy and Lydia. I think there's two of my favorite questions that I really like to ask, and one of them Cindy was kind of referring to. I really like to ask candidates what they think the biggest challenge in education is right now. And I really try to push them beyond the pandemic, because really the root of that question is, even though they confront challenges, what do they do about them? So what are the challenges, whether it comes to sometimes it's parent engagement, sometimes it's student attendance, sometimes it's in this virtual world, it was that engagement piece, particularly for those students, and what did they do in order to solve those problems? So I really like that question, and I also like discussing what they feel an optimal learning environment looks like, because that question also encompasses not the traditional, I don't necessarily want to know that kids are in rows or in pods, but really is there structure within the classroom? Are there routines? How do you have students collaborate with each other? What does that look like? What is the teacher's role? What is the student's role? So those are kind of two of my favorite questions.
Thank you all. Forgive me here if you see me looking away. We have a very engaged audience and folks are asking questions. So I'm going to ask one more that we have pre-planned, and then I'm going to kind of dip into the Q&A here from our attendees. This question is for Yvonne and Angela. What experience and skills have candidates shared in their interviews that you felt helped them make a positive impression?
I would say for me, and I think the panelists with the previous question alluded to this as well, is your why. Why do you want to be a teacher? What's your story behind wanting to be a teacher? And can I hear your passion behind your why? Another thing that comes up for me as well is, where are you with your own racial consciousness? Is it something that you are working on? Is it something that you are aware of? Is it something that you are trying to incorporate in your class through culturally responsive education lessons and resources that you're using in your classroom? And I would say with the last one is just seeing your personality in the interview. I know interviews are really nerve-wracking and they're scary, but being able to see a glimpse of your personality as well, and to see how you connect with me as a stranger, and how you can pass that along to your kids? Those are just some of the things that that really speak up for me.
Thanks so much for sharing. And again, echo all of those type of things. When we're talking about experience, I think we as educators understand that the whole world is a classroom, and we understand that that education extends outside of the classroom. So we want to hear about some of your own personal life experiences, whether you volunteered at the Boys or Girls Club, or at a camp, those type of things, to let us know if you really have a community type mindset. So we're looking for those type of things to show that you actually are engaged. We understand that education is something that will prepare you for life. So we want to see what your life experiences are. I will use my life experience as an educator. I grew up with 8 brothers and sisters, and we had an extended family the whole time. So we learned about community, we learned about sharing, we learned about all of those type of things in that family demographic and in the community that I grew up in. So I think sharing your experience about where you grew up, how you grew up, some of the teachers that you had, some of the life experience, even some of the jobs you might have had. We understand when you're coming into education as a new graduate, you're not going to have a lot of experience in the classroom per se. So don't undermine or marginalize the experience that you've had in life and those experiences, because that tell about how you just deal with life in general. And those are some of the things that cannot necessarily be taught in the classroom.
Angela and Yvonne, if I can further this a little bit. So you're both describing to me different aspects of personal information, or even some identity-based information that would be important for an applicant to consider when in conversation with you all. How do you know, or what's the boundary between what's too much personal information to share in an interview with you?
Yvonne, are you there?
I'm here. I am thinking. I really don't know how to answer that. What do you think, Miss Angela?
And I would say that it would depend upon your comfort level. Some of the things that might seem, very private or personal to me, somebody else might think, I appreciate the transparency. But a lot of that has to do with, the culture and the time I grew up in, so I'm not going to think like a 20 or 30-year-old, and just on the fact that, just being an African-American woman and feeling that we cannot necessarily be as transparent because we feel like, there's some things that might actually be counted against us per se, so I struggle with some of those type of things. So I would say that it would depend on your comfort level. I don't think it's necessary for you to share, who your last boyfriend was, or, what I'm saying, those type of things. But any kind of experience, even those struggles and trials that you've been through that help to shape and form you to the person that you are today. I grew up in a place called East St. Louis, which was, a very, you know about East St. Louis? You know about East St. Louis, girl?
I grew up in suburbs of St. Louis, so
okay, so you know about East St. Louis.
I do.
That experience really helped me to value education. I grew up in if you know about East St. Louis, it was, when I was growing up, it had the most crime per capita than any other city in the whole United States, which actually drove me to education, to want to get out of an environment that I could help other people in those particular things. Some people might say, why would you tell somebody that you came from such a poor neighborhood? Because in that, I believe it helped me to value education. So I don't mind sharing those type of stories. So any story that you believe that is going to get across the message as to why you now value education and how it shaped and formed you into the person that you are and the mindset you have, I believe that those experiences are very, very crucial, as long as you are comfortable with sharing whatever those experiences are.
Thank you all. This next question is for Brian, Cindy, and Lydia. How has COVID changed your hiring process?
Well, tremendously. Just even starting with this forum that's normally in person, it's now virtual. And I will be honest, it takes effort to connect virtually. It's not the same as sitting across from a person and having a conversation with them. Connecting is very different. And so just the interview process brings out different things when you're doing it on a virtual platform. Also, it has changed our ability to be able to travel, of course, to recruit. And so we are looking to streamline that process in this virtual world. That's something that we're doing very differently this year than in years past. Also, I would say, and just to kind of go back to something that I said before, because of COVID, at this point in the year, we would normally know exactly what our vacancies are going to look like for the next year. And this year, we don't quite. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball as a result of the year that we've had. And so when we're talking to candidates, it's hard to always not be able to answer your questions about exactly how many of this type of teacher are you looking for, how many teachers are going to be hired across the state. We genuinely don't know. We're learning some things along with you as candidates. So that's one of the things that's been very different for us in this recruiting season and our hiring process.
Yeah, and I agree with Lydia that as I talk to my other HR colleagues, they're all saying the same thing, that the cycle is going to be later this year. So it's going to take some patience between the legislature being delayed in getting final decisions about dollars to districts, to trying to track down where kids are and starting online programs and trying to figure out can we claim those kids or do we need to cut that FTE based on lack of enrollment. All of those decisions are pushing back the timeline. I'll add that that I've been seeing a lot of candidates who are coming ready for this environment and coming ready for interviews in this environment, which is really refreshing. Being able to pass on links to a video of themselves working with kids. Those kinds of touches really have helped us get to know candidates well quickly and be able to see examples of their work in classrooms. Who are they in front of kids? How do they present? How do they make connections? Their with-itness with kids is really important. So there have been some refreshing pieces of the COVID experience that hopefully will continue. That those little extra tidbits that we're starting to see candidates offer up and display and make public, those are really helpful. So there've been some benefits.
Yeah, I would say too that there was some actually really positive things about it. I think the candidates didn't have as much of a difficulty because generally they're a little younger and they're more techno savvy. I think our principals struggled with it a little bit more than the candidates did, but we're used to that platform, that type of an environment anyway, because being on the other side of the state, we often accommodate video chat type interviews anyway. And so what I found actually, just from my perspective of being in human resources, it actually was easier for us because we were able to schedule interviews much easier without having to reschedule and try and work out a schedule, because sometimes people are interviewing for 2 or 3 on the same day, and they were able to do that with the video platform, type environment. So for us, it actually, I felt like sped things along a little bit and just made it easier to accommodate people's special requests for interviews. I actually liked it. It worked out pretty well. I know the principals struggle with it a little bit because they do like to see that candidate person to person, but it works.
Thank you all. It's like some of these adjustments we've all had to do that you all do behind the scenes that we can't always see. Seems as if we have a couple students that are curious about how they can construct an elevator pitch and talk about themselves in an introductory manner. Nidia and Lydia, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on advice that you have for a student introducing themselves to you and what's important for them to include.
I would say be careful with the idea of an elevator pitch because it can come across as a canned response. So I would say maybe put together some bullet points of important things that you want to relay, but also, as Yvonne said earlier, let your personality come through. We want to hear about, as some of the other panelists have said, your experience and your why, what brought you here. If you can get those facts succinctly into some bullets and then be able to talk naturally about those things, I think that is probably the best approach, as opposed to having something that you've memorized, because it's difficult to inject authenticity into something like that.
And I would actually completely agree with Lydia, especially in this virtual world. I think that we're starting to see less and less of those kind of elevator speeches. For me, one of the things that really draws my attention when a candidate introduces themselves is if they kind of relate that they know a little bit about our school. So for example, for us, do they know that we are a dual language academy? Do they know that we are a charter school? So if you can kind of do a plug-in for a specific school and anything that you have already done your research about, to me, that's probably a little bit more impressive than something that, like Lydia was saying, is a little more rehearsed. And again, these interviews are super fast. They are only 10 minutes long. And I think the reality is we will be asking you the questions that are of high priority to us. So don't feel like you have to completely really put yourself out there on the get-go. Just be enthusiastic, just be excited. I'm Nidia Martinez. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for taking some time to meet with me. I've been waiting to interview with, Cherry Creek schools or whatever it might be, and that'll already kind of get you in the door.
I like that you both just kind of said you can shake the idea of the elevator pitch, like just to approach the conversation as you are is how I suspect you all are imagining folks are going to be interacting with students. So thank you for that. We have a student that is curious about what might the process, or can you foresee what the hiring process may look like in the fall for students that are currently student teaching and are interested in being employed mid-year. Angela and Cindy, Brian, could you share with us if you can foresee out what mid-year hiring might look like for you all?
And I know that everyone is probably tired of hearing that it's just difficult to tell in this virtual world that we are in. What I can tell you though, because it is virtual and because everyone does not feel as comfortable with it, we probably are going to have a little bit more movement during mid-year, based on life changes, based on whether or not we're back in the classroom, and if people want to continue with, some people are still a little bit shy about going into the classroom. Some people want to be in the classroom. All of those things make a difference as to whether or not how many more openings I guess we will have mid-year. I can tell you just because we are a large school district, what we have seen in the past is that we probably have maybe at least about 15% additional hires mid-year than we had at the beginning of the year. So we probably will expect or anticipate somewhere around that, even in this virtual world.
And I would add, kind of keep an eye out early. November is a nice time to be out looking, to be checking websites. Districts have all kinds of situations that happen, and Angela was alluding to those. Out in Fort Morgan, we from time to time, we will get somebody who accepts a position early. Don't do this, candidates. don't accept a position early and then get into the summer and say, no, I'm going to go do something else, because we've held a spot for you, right? And this year we had that happen, and we weren't able to fill that position in August. So we figured out how to kind of cobble it so that first semester got taken care of, but we ended up hiring it for second semester. And we picked up a great graduate, a December graduate. All those things happen. So pay attention early, pay attention around November, because there will be onesie twosie positions that open up, and you will be able to either land a position for the rest of the semester. Definitely, we all need subs all the time. So if you are hooked to a location, no matter what district you are in, whether it's Greeley or Boulder or Longmont or Fort Morgan, we need subs. So show up and sub for us. Get a ton of experience. Get to know principals, get to know kids, practice your craft, because doing a long-term sub gig is great work. And most districts pay pretty well for that long-term sub position. So there's options. Don't be hesitant about being a December grad. You will have things to do.
Yeah, and like Angela said, you never know how many positions you're going to have. It's surprising actually how many we end up filling in January. They're just, things just come up. People sometimes leave the profession and after they've been in there for 6 months, it just isn't what they thought. And so they'll leave, and we do have positions to fill. And sometimes you just have an influx of kids and you need a new teacher. The other thing that we see a lot is because education is huge for in women, we see maternity leaves that come up a lot mid-year. And so for us, if we hire somebody for the whole semester, we like to put them on contract rather than filling as a long-term sub and give them that opportunity to be on contract. So we do a lot of that as well.
Thank you all. There's a question here that's like at the beginning of the process. What are things you look for in a candidate's application materials, such as their resume, their cover letter, teaching philosophy, and parts of their application? Yvonne, Nidia, and Angela, could you share your thoughts about what are you looking for in an initial screen of an applicant?
I think as someone had mentioned earlier, work-related experience is going to be the biggest asset that you have, especially if you are a brand new teacher. So it's nice to see that you worked at Pizza Hut or McDonald's or whatever it might be, but that doesn't really guide me as to what experience you have in the classroom. So even if it is just student teaching, even if it is just a practicum experience, tutoring, volunteering, whatever it might be, those are the areas that you're really going to want to highlight versus maybe your actual current paying job. So that would be important. I was vetting a lot of resumes today in preparation for this. And one of the other items for some candidates where their degree information is towards the bottom of the resume, really that's something that I would encourage you to highlight right away as well, because I need to know if there would be a good fit for you within the positions that we currently have available.
Something that definitely we'll be looking for on our end is sometimes when we get resumes, I feel like I have to go on a treasure hunt to find what endorsements you have. So I would definitely say, make sure you put that at the top of your resume so that we will know, you, especially, with these professions, you need to understand that school leaders are going through tons of resumes. And so if they're going to have to struggle to find out what your endorsements are, or those type of things, they're probably going to put it to the side. Another thing, make sure you use some key terms like collaboration. Some of the things that are going to be culturally responsive pedagogy, those type of things. You want to make sure that some kind of way you include those type of things in your resume. The cover letter is very, very important, but to be very honest, if the resume is not, showing what needs to be shown, we won't ever even get to the cover letter. So the cover letter is going to be your first entry point. Please try to keep it no more than 2 pages. You know, we've seen resumes really literally up to 10 pages. We don't need the dissertation. We need for you to use those keywords to tell us, you're not in the elevator speak type way, but make sure when you write out your mission statement or your why, that you can use some of those terms to let us know about what your passion is, and be honest in your resume. If you don't have that experience, I promise you, once you're being interviewed, we can spot a fake. So you want to make sure that you're being honest. And we love teachers because we understand that you're a lifelong learner. So we're not expecting people to have all of the answers, but we are looking for people who understand that they're going to be on a lifelong journey to learn. After you get your degree, you know, here in a little bit, it's going to pretty much be obsolete in about 5 years, which is why you're going to have professional development until Jesus comes back.
And I would echo everything that Nidia and Angela said. They talked a lot about the resume and the important pieces of that. And once you have that strong resume, that cover letter is a great way for you to introduce who you are as a person, as a teacher. Again, this is where you can explain your why and your passion behind why you want to be a teacher. That's the only other thing that I would add.
This next question is for Brian, Cindy, and Lydia. What questions are appropriate and what questions are not appropriate for a candidate to ask of you during an interview?
Wow. I would say that the interview is not a good time to get into salary questions. Generally speaking, you can find salary information on most of our websites. And so I would say do your due diligence with regard to salary on our websites, but it's not a great time in an interview where an interviewer is attempting to get to know you and your passion behind education, and you're asking, but how much are you going to pay me? So I would be careful about salary conversations in an interview.
I'd agree with that. And on the positive side, I like when candidates want to know about the support that they're going to get, mentoring, induction, professional development. If they're asking questions around the identity of the school, why do we do this? Why do we do this way? Those are really, good. Those are good questions. It tells me that I've got a interested, intelligent candidate who can see themselves being successful and knows that that there's support as part of that, and they're showing their coachability. All of those pieces are nice to be able to see in a candidate right off the bat. So I'd say that'd be on the plus side of what we'd like to see.
Yeah, I think they pretty much covered it, other than maybe I can see a candidate asking about the learning community of that school. How do the teachers collaborate, and what does that look like for them? And what kind of support will they get from their mentor in that process?
Other things that are not appropriate?
I'll just chime in that, just keep an eye on the professionalism of your application. Different interviewers have different pet peeves. I've got a principal right now who swears that they won't interview somebody with a goofy email address. So Boopsy42 is not going to get an interview, but Brian Childress at gmail.com will. So just as you think about your interview, as you think about your application, know that this is a professional position and somebody is hiring you for a professional position that is going to represent the community. Our public schools represent our communities, and we are high profile. in our communities. We serve parents, we serve community partners. So our school districts are looking for professional people. So just make sure that your whole application is professional.
And Renee, I would just add to make sure to do your research. If you're interviewing at a certain school, don't ask questions about, I don't know, don't ask questions that you can find on the school's website. To me, that is a bit of a pet peeve because that tells me you haven't invested in this position. You haven't done your research to show me that you are invested in wanting to be a teacher at my school. So I would say definitely do your research and don't ask questions that will be easily accessible on the school's website or the district's website.
Yvonne, we hear that time and time again from school districts, and try real hard to make sure that students know that researching as much as they can before they interview is so important. This next question kind of goes with some of the ideas that you all were talking about in regards to mentors for new teachers. And a participant is interested in knowing how you all feel about hiring first-year teachers, and what would you recommend as for ways to combat feeling self-conscious about being a first-year teacher? And I'm going to direct that to Lydia, Nidia, and Angela.
I would say get comfortable not knowing what you don't know. As a first year teacher, none of us expect you to come in and know everything. We have seasoned veterans that don't know everything, but the reason they're seasoned veterans is because they are willing to keep learning. So as long as you are open to continue learning, as long as you know that you have people around you that are there to support you and answer your questions, always ask the question, whatever it is. Even if you're deathly afraid that it's going to make you look ridiculous, ask it anyway, because you don't want to find yourself in a position that actually does make you look ridiculous when you could have asked a question that would avoid that situation. So be open to learn as much as you possibly can from all of the people around you.
Like to share a couple of things. One is that at DPS, we have a program that's called Teacher Leader Collaboration. Really appreciate that because every new teacher who comes into the district is assigned a mentor, an ambassador, if you will. And the reason we appreciate that program so much is because these are teachers who are in the classroom part of the time, and then the other part of the day, they're actually serving as mentors in the classroom, helping with curriculum planning, classroom management, and all of those particular things. So I said that because I believe that it's a partnership, and I believe that the school should take ownership in ensuring that it's a safe and comfortable and thriving environment to work in as well. But having said that, I believe that you need to take ownership of your own career trajectory. Even though we will provide opportunities for career development and those type of things, it's your own is also, if you believe that those areas are of weakness to you, you find out from your mentors and from your school leaders if they have some programs that will actually assist in that. And if not, find a program that actually does. So I definitely believe that if this is something you're going to be doing, you're going to have to invest in yourself. So make sure that you do those particular things, and get a mentor. I would say get a mentor regardless of what stage you are in life. And not only get a mentor, but also get someone that you can mentor, because that helps you to hone your skills as well when you are investing into somebody else's life, and that's going to keep you sharp. So I would recommend those for any teacher. And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's in your school or in your community, but make sure you can have someone who can actually speak into your life, who can tell you the truth and let you know when your breath stinks, and you will receive it.
I guess the one other thing that I would just add is, everybody was a new teacher at one point. We've all been there. and you're not the only one. And it's okay. Again, nobody expects you to have all of the right answers. And so my biggest push would be to encourage you to just continue being genuine, because you're not going to know all of the right answers. And I think it was Angela that was saying earlier, we're going to be able to tell. We're going to be able to tell what you do and you don't know, and that's okay. And that's not anything against you. It simply shows us that you're new. You're a little bit green. Again, the things that you're going to want to showcase is really that you have that growth mindset. And more than anything, even as a brand new teacher, what are you going to bring to the team? How are you going to continue to support the school's mission, even being a brand new teacher? Are you going to be a dynamic collaborator? Are you big on parent engagement? Are you just a kindergarten guru? Whatever it might be, but really continue to showcase what your assets really are going to be, even with little experience. And those are the parts that are really going to shine through.
Thank you all. This next question is for Cindy, Brian, and Yvonne. What are key traits that you look for in a special/elective teacher?
Well, I think when they're a special elective teacher, they have to be very collaborative, because they're needing to work with all the teachers in the building. And so they really need to be able to work collaboratively. And I also think they need to be good relationship builders, because they don't have the kids all day like the other teachers do. So they have a shorter period of time to build those relationships with kids. So they need to really be good relationship builders with kids. And, they need to be enthusiastic, obviously.
Go ahead, Brian.
I totally agree with Cindy, and thank you, Yvonne. I would add that all of those specials areas are in the middle of going through a little bit of an evolution at the moment. And so when teachers, as new teachers especially, have some vision on where things are headed, it's really a nice asset. Our schools were trying to do some things like particularly art, for example. Graphic design is a way to grow away from pottery and move, not to dismiss pottery because it's wonderful, but graphic design yields similar creative outlets, but also can yield things like certificates and real world tangibles. So does an ashtray, but keeping an eye on where are things headed in the discipline. Three-dimensional design work, innovative practices in computers as opposed to just manning the computer lab. What do real world problem-based pieces look like? And so keeping an eye on that and having some ideas about where those professions can grow. I think that's really exciting.
I would add to obviously knowledge of the content that you're going to teach, and having those electives and integrated arts positions, especially at the elementary level, you're alone. You obviously have your other integrated arts and specials teachers. And Cindy mentioned this, but how are you going to collaborate with other teachers in the district? What's your plan for that? And what's your plan for what you're going to teach? There's a lot of free reign, I feel like, as an integrated arts or a specials teacher. So what's your dream? What's your plan? What skills specifically do you want to teach your students? And again, I feel like I've said this a lot, but passion. How passionate are you about the specific area or content that you want to teach in?
Thank you all. Angela, Nidia, I have a question here about, do interviewers look at resumes beforehand, or should interviewees be prepared to bring anything to share to the interview, such as a lesson plan or portfolio?
Yes, we absolutely vet resumes beforehand, 100%. But my biggest advice would be to be prepared anyway, because you're not going to know. You're not going to know who has or has not looked at your resume, and you're not going to know if they are or are not going to ask for your lesson plans. My guess is that in a 10-minute interview, it's highly unlikely. I would guess that more of us will ask a question like, describe what your literacy lesson would look like for a group of second graders. I imagine more of those kinds of questions versus please, let's showcase your full lesson plan. But anything, be prepared with absolutely everything. Have those resumes ready, have the lesson plans ready, have the cover letters ready, have student samples ready, whatever it might be, because again, you want to showcase yourself as being prepared. And in the case that you don't have something, make sure to follow up with the person that is interviewing and be honest that, you know what, I actually don't have that in my hands at this moment, but as soon as we end the interview, I would be happy to email it to you. So again, even if for some reason you are put on the spot with something that you don't have, just make sure that you are willing to provide whatever it is that was asked.
Thanks much, Nidia. I think in the platform that we're going to be having with you in a couple of days, is pretty much going to be trying to find out what your educational philosophy is and who you are as a person. I know that interviews have been sent, but we don't know who we're going to be meeting with. So we probably won't have the opportunity to look at all the resumes. So we're depending on you to let us know who you are, what you want to do, what your passion is. And like I said, we know we've said this quite a bit, but you really do have to have a passion to work with our young people because, they come with so many challenges in their personal life, in their school life. They've had such a hard time, even in this virtual platform that we're in. And if you don't have passion, and if you really are not dedicated to this, that's why we have people who think that they want to do it. And after the first year, it wipes them out. So you have to have a passion to want to do something like this. But again, in that 10 minutes, we're just trying to find out who you are. And for the most part, trying to find out if you're going to be a good fit for our district. So we're just trying to find out who you are as a person for the most part. So we might get to ask a couple of questions that have to do with things like classroom management and those type of things, but it's mostly just to find out who you are and if you're comfortable in your own skin for the most part. And I want to add something here that has nothing to do with what you asked about, Renee, just in case we don't get to it.
Do it.
Please dress like you're coming to an interview. I would definitely, just in case we don't get to get to that piece, if we know it's just 10 minutes, but we've seen people come and I'm thinking, did you forget we're having an interview today? You know what I'm saying? So first impressions are first impressions, and there's nothing you can do to take that back. So please make sure that you are dressed appropriately. Make sure that you're in a position where you are free of distractions and those type of things. So I know that it's been said, but that is so much, that's so important. And I've even had interviews where people have never turned on their cameras. Be prepared to turn on your camera. So, it is not an option to not have your camera on. So make sure you have all of your technical things worked out prior to your interview. And thanks so much for allowing me to share that, even though that was not the question at all. I appreciate it.
Angela, hearing you describe that, I have close friends who are teachers that tell me about what it's like to teach a classroom of no cameras on. And I can't imagine what that's like in an interview setting. Nidia, please. Yes.
And watch your body language and your demeanor too. I just had a virtual job fair last week and I literally had a guy like this, hands up, and was just kind of kicking his feet up. So treat it as if it was the real thing. And again, 100%, I agree with Angela, is that we want to see you. We want to interact with you. So just be very careful of your affect as well.
Cindy, Brian, and Lydia, why should I attend a virtual job fair? So could you give us some tips on what are the benefits of attending an event like this in regards to a candidate?
I would say that this is your opportunity to make that first impression. You can always go to our website and submit an application for a position. But when you've had an opportunity to speak with a building leader to actually make an impression on them, we actually had our job fair in Cherry Creek, March 3rd. And I had building leaders who interviewed candidates and called me immediately and said, this is someone that we have to have in our district. And we gave out early intent to hires based on those recommendations. That's not something that you get by just submitting an application. So this is your opportunity to make that impression, to connect with people, to get to know people. Yes, we are in a virtual world, but that does not negate at all the effect of having that face-to-face conversation with the building leader and truly making an impression on that person.
Cindy Bryan.
I would add that this is, if for candidates, is a great opportunity to be able to talk to a lot of different districts and get a feel for a lot of different district styles. Somebody earlier said, give some background and how your experience connects to the district. That's really important. If you're talking to me, know that your experience is, and your connection to Morgan County schools or rural schools or small communities is really important. And I'm going to take that information and I'm going to try to get you directly to the building leader that's doing the hiring. Fort Morgan stepped out on a limb and we are posting quite a few positions, different from some of our colleagues. And so we have real openings and we are doing really real hiring. So you'll talk to me, but then quickly you'll be in contact with a building leader who is interviewing actively. It is we're hiring. And so being a part of the job fair means that you have access to real positions and real possibilities and career potential moving forward.
Yeah. I would say too that to echo what Ryan said, it is an opportunity for you to, so to speak, interview the district that you're considering. And you just never know what is going to be a good fit for you. I can't tell you how many times we've actually hired somebody at a fair. Obviously, this was an in-person fair, but that wasn't even considering our district, but we started talking to them. And then after being able to talk about our district and our area, we obviously have a different kind of unique area on the other side of the state. We were able to hire them, but they hadn't even considered our district. So just have an open mind and consider all districts.
We're going to try to answer a couple more questions here. Is everybody still good? Okay. This one is for Yvonne and Nidia. What should a candidate do after their interview? Do you like being directly emailed a thank you note? And how do we do this? Does it come across as like nagging or pestering you by sending follow-up?
I personally love the follow-up thank you emails. I think it's a great way to make that personal connection. During teacher fairs, there are so many teachers that we talk to. And for that person to just put a little bit of effort in and know that they listened and heard that I work at this specific school and that they went and tried to find my email address to send me this email, that tells me that they're really invested and that they're really wanting that job. And that person sticks out in my mind for sure. So me personally, I love those thank you notes.
I agree. I don't think sending a quick thank you note would be pestering. I would never consider that, I don't think. And it doesn't have to be hugely complex. It can just say, I appreciated having the opportunity to meet with you at the job fair, and I look forward to hearing a response from you soon, or something simple like that. But yes, it makes me go back and look at my notes And there have been opportunities where maybe I hadn't rated a candidate very highly, but seeing the interest that they truly have in this position kind of makes me, second guess and possibly give that candidate a call back again. So no, absolutely send a quick email. And again, it doesn't have to be super fancy or anything, but it goes a long, long way.
Cindy and Lydia, could you describe for us how you identify the priority for your hiring? So the types of positions that you might seek to hire before others, or maybe you try to hire all positions at the same time. Is there kind of a method that you use that you'd be willing to share?
For us, and please forgive the fur baby noise in the background. I'm sorry. The natives are a little restless, but our hard to fill positions are absolutely first, which would usually include science, math, secondary level, Spanish secondary level. So we're always looking to fill those hard to fill positions. We're always looking to fill SPED positions. Those are, on a revolving loop of always, we can always use those types of teachers. And then from there, just how our vacancies shake out will dictate, how our hiring priority.
Yeah, I would say that ours is very similar. What we usually do, again, this is a different kind of a year. Sometimes we post our positions in February and we're way ahead of the game, but this year and last year was very different. So I would say that would be the one thing I would want to really, point out to students is to be very patient this year, that all school districts are going to be probably late in their hiring. But what we usually do is when we don't know for sure what positions we're going to have, just because we're trying to figure it all out, is we post pools of positions. And so that we can just have places for people to apply. So we've already done that, even though we don't know our specific positions yet. And then once we actually have specific positions at specific schools, we post those so that people know where the positions are and they can apply to both the pools and the specific positions. That way the principal is seeing them in the pool and in their own position.
Okay, we're going to conclude with a question I'm just making up. What is one thing that we didn't cover today that you kind of, you were prepared to talk with students about that you want them to know before they might interview?
I guess I can start off with that one. I was just going to mention that we're just as nervous as you are when it comes particularly with the technology piece, and anticipate hiccups. It's just the reality of it right now, and know that we're not going to hold that against you. Just reach out to us. I know that at the last fair I was at, sometimes we would just have to pick up the phone and have a quick phone interview. Be prepared because sometimes there is a lag. And it just gets a little bit awkward. So just anticipate those technological hiccups and just go with it. It's going to be a great way to really demonstrate your flexibility as well.
I would say know who you are and don't be afraid to own that. While you may not be a great fit for one district, you are a perfect fit for another. So do not try to conform yourself into what it is that you think we want. Be authentically who you are and know that you are going to land in the right place.
And I would like to add to that, Lydia, I think a lot of times you get anxious about getting a position. So you just take one that you believe that's going to pay the bills. You don't want to do that. Life is too short, and you want to find a place that actually is a good fit for you and also for the other people as well, because it's not fair to our kiddos for you to be in a place, in a space that you don't really appreciate, because they won't be able to get their optimal learning. So even though you might get an offer, if you don't believe that it's a good fit for you, owe it to yourself to say, no, thank you, and wait on something that you believe is actually going to be a better fit for you.
You're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing you. And like Angela and Lydia said, be authentic and true to who you are. So if you feel like the school you're interviewing for isn't a good fit, be okay with that.
I'll build on that just a little bit more. All of us that you're listening to today are really interested in you being successful from a career standpoint and being successful in a career-long effort. So what Lydia's saying, what Angela's saying, what Yvonne's saying is exactly right on. It feels sometimes like it's a short-term decision. Really, this is a long-term play, right? And so you know, we want to groom that in you. We want to grow that in you, but you also need to be in the right spot to do that.
Cindy, do you have a final thought that hasn't been covered?
I think so. I think they covered it all.
Well, thank you all, Brian, Angela, Cindy, Nidia, Lydia, and Yvonne. Thank you for spending your evening with us and sharing your expertise. I know I learned a lot, and there's, you know, over 90 attendees over here that I think you impacted as well. So thank you very much for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it.